Oh, we're live. Hey, Michael. Um, it's exciting to do another Python Bytes with you. So, hey,
As always.
welcome everybody. Thanks for showing up. Let's kick it off. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 443, recorded August 4th, 2025, and I'm Brian Ocken.
And I'm Michael Kennedy.
And you can reach us on the socials on Blue Sky or Mastodon. Check out the show notes or the website pythonbytes.fm to find all those links. And if you'd like to watch us live, you can check out pythonbytes.fm/live, and it's usually Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. But you can go there for all the older to link to the YouTube channel to get all the older episodes as well. And this episode we have is sponsored by you guys, by the offerings that both Michael and I have, and you're supporting us through that. Really helps us going to getting courses, buying books. That's pretty much it. Also Patreon. So thanks, Patreon people. Anyway, let's kick it off. What you got, Michael?
I have something sent in from Owen Lamont. And so, Owen, thank you for sending this in. I believe we've talked about Markdown formatting stuff before, but I want to look at this one because it's got some rough vibes. R-U-F-F, not R-O-U-G-H. Rough vibes in that it's a formatter written in Rust, seems insanely fast. And even though it's a general purpose thing and it's written in Rust, it has special love for the Python people. So there's a PyPI wrapper, basically a wheel that wraps up the commands going to it. So you can pip install it, UV pip install it, more importantly, UV tool install. It also has a pre-commit hook and pyproject.toml support. It's pretty neat,
Very
right?
cool. Yeah.
I just ran it on a project I'm working on, and apparently, what did it say? How many errors? 14. 14 errors I found in and it will fix them in the similar way if you do a -- fix, I believe. So that's pretty cool. High performance Markdown formatter. So you can install it in lots of ways, but I would just UV tool install it. It has 54 linting rules, which are apparently common Markdown issues. Like if I have a heading, there should be a line break between the heading and the content of that section. You can fix most of them with -- fix, like I said, which is beautiful. No dependencies, single binary. Highly configurable, which is great because a lot of the warnings I get when I run it are this line length of 102 exceeds the 80 character limit. I don't know, like when do we move on from the 80 character limit in like things, Python and other? I have a 4K monitor, 32-inch 4K monitor. If I put stuff in 32 or 80 columns, it's like on the left. And the 80 columns is like, well, that's the default size of a terminal. Like, okay, is that where most of our Markdown is done? Probably not, but I don't know. I'd say make it long and let it wrap. The reason I don't like that rule, particularly for Markdown, is I use Typora, which I love. But Typora, it keeps a little more of the formatting visually there. So even if I was to like do the Markdown and render it to a web page or to a PDF, the line breaks would disappear because you have to have 2 line breaks, right? Like a blank line. But in Typora, while you're editing it, you see them. And so you would see like chunks. So if I make my editor wider, it like stops going. If I make it skinnier though, then it like has like weird half line breaks because it's wrapping the 80 lines to like 60 and then there's 20 more. And like, it's just, I hate that rule. So why am I ranting so much? Well, because I rant apparently. But it's also super configurable. So you can go to a TOML file down here. And once you find it, in here, it has a bunch of examples. I think up at the top here. There. And you can go in here and it gives you examples. Like I can say disable rule MD013, or in my case, yes, that's the one. Of course it's 13. It's unlucky. But you can also configure the rules. Like say rule 7 is about indentation. How many characters, how many spaces do you want to indent by? Or different things, right? Don't apply the line length considerations to code blocks or tables, but override the line length to be 100. Again, I'm turning that off, but still, I guess I could set it to infinity. That would be fine. All right. But isn't this cool?
Yeah, it is really cool. I want to jump on the line length bandwagon a little bit here, though.
Let's do it.
The line, I agree. I'm glad this is configurable because, like, in writing a book or something, or a tutorial, I'm going to have long paragraphs, and I don't want. I'd rather have those just wrap, and I don't want to limit my line length. So I would turn that off if I'm writing like long form stuff.
Yeah, I'm thinking my
However,
blog posts and things like that, right? Which are all
yeah.
Markdown.
But for the Markdown in a project, like even if it's a documentation project maybe, I guess I could see it for like READMEs or something, or things that are changing a lot, because you're doing diffs more. You do have to be aware of the diffs. But I think diff tools deal with word wrap fine now. So anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a fair issue. Fair point.
But
But if you got long form writing, it doesn't make sense.
yeah, it doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, that's weird.
It's not like in Word or Google Docs, like, where do you want to break your lines? Like, no, I wanted to just go across the page. Could we just let me write?
Yeah.
All right. But it's super cool. You can, like I said, UV tool install it. It even has instructions for UV. Or you can use UV tool run. And so you could run it without even actually installing it, just to test out how it might go.
Yeah. So what's the big? Do you know what the biggest mistake is you usually make for Markdown? Or
I haven't done enough
okay,
messing with it yet, but I can report back to you.
okay. Mine. I haven't even used the tool yet, but I'm looking forward to trying it, because the thing that always trips me up is a space before unordered list. So if you like write a sentence with a colon, and then you do a new line, and then you start do the asterisk or dash or something like that and start a list. Some tools will automatically understand that you intended it to be a list, and some of them don't, and you just get a bunch of asterisks in a paragraph. And so yeah, I need something to fix that for me. So
Definitely.
All right, on to the next topic. I want to talk about coverage, because Ned Batchelder released. This is a blog post from the end of July 24th. Coverage 7.10.0 with patch. So we're actually up to 7.10.2 now, but it's the patch that's like the super cool news. And I just read about this, and I am like really excited about it, because so one of the things it adds 3 things. So if we go to the change log, it's adding patch subprocess, patch exec v, and patch exit or underscore exit or something. And I'll do the weird ones first. I don't really see exec v around, but the issue with exec v and exit is that that's a way like something happens in your stuff gets torn down before coverage has a chance to write its stuff. It just like processes stop, and that's not cool. But there's this you can fix that. So and there've been workarounds for these other things, and so that's not really the big news. The big news, I think, is subprocess, because there were ways to, if you're trying to run coverage on a project that has subprocesses, you have to have some way to like cover all of those processes and then combine them later. And there were ways to deal with it, but it was a little clunky. Now we've got a way to do it right built in. You just say patch equals subprocess, and coverage does it for you. How
That's
cool is that?
And
That's pretty
multiprocessing, it'll count multiprocessing execution for coverage.
That's yes. Thank you, Ned. So I'm really excited about this. It's pretty cool. Anyway, that's it, really.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a really good one. Short and sweet. This one comes to us from Pat Decker, I believe. I hope I'm remembering that right because I forgot to write it down. So someone else sent it in. I apologize. I'm pretty sure it's Pat sent this over. And it's AIO Bodo 3. So Bodo 3 is the Python package to talk to things like S3 and other stuff in Amazon, okay, and AWS. Don't get me started on Bodo 3. It's a bit of a insane package, the way it's created. But what I want to talk about is AIO Bodo 3, which is a wrapper on top of Bodo 3 resources that leverages the AIO Bodo core async backend. So what's going on from here? This is a package by Terry Kane, and she created, I think, to basically make higher level operations, which you would use from the Bodo 3 level, instead of the Bodo core, which is more low level, detailed interaction with AWS. But there was a async low level one, but not an async high level one. And so now there's an async high level one. So for example, do you want to work with S3 contents asynchronously? Well, here you go. So you can do things like create a session and then say async with, go to a resource for S3, then await getting a bucket, and then loop over asynchronously with an async for across all the items in that bucket. So if you want to do a bunch of S3 type of work or DynamoDB or Kinesis, or whatever, then you want to do that asynchronously. Well, here you go. Right. Also, she has an example of working with a DynamoDB table and reading and writing objects into it, which is pretty sweet.
What's Kinesis?
What is Kinesis? Good question.
That's a AWS thing? Oh, looking that up.
Kinesis. That's not even how you spell it, but luckily.
Because I just thought it was keyboard.
It's a family of services provided by AWS for processing and analyzing real-time streaming data at a large scale. I'm glad you asked because this is what I've been working for a long time, Ryan.
Okay. Sorry.
No, apparently like data streaming, data lake, data processing, analytics.
Okay. Got it.
Cool. That's it. That's all I got to say about it. But if you're using Bodo 3 and you want to do async, AIO Bodo 3.
All right. Well, sorry for the distraction, but I wanted to, anyway, I have a Kinesis keyboard. That's why I'm like, what?
Yes, you do, don't you?
Yeah. Anyway.
Tell people what it like here.
I was trying
put
to
one up on the screen.
Yeah, I was trying to look for one. Kinesis keyboard images. Oh, here we go. Did you find one? No. There we go.
They are wild. I had one for a while. I'm like, I'm not sure I can do this.
Oh, I love it. So I just did the image search, but yeah, they're split like this, and it's in there, and also your keys are in little divots.
Yeah, maybe I can see if I could describe it for people, Ryan. Like, imagine you took an orange, you cut the orange in half, you took out the orange fleshy bit, and you lined the inside of the orange peel with keys. That's what typing on it is like. You type into like these round holes.
Okay, but I would say like coconuts maybe because it's bigger. But
or like a coconut where you just work with like the lower third and the top third.
Yeah, but one of the things that's cool about these is they're in. Do you remember the Men in Black movie?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, I did till they flashed me, but you know.
Well, the Men in Black movie had the office scene in the first one. Everybody's using Kinesis. It's pretty cool.
Oh, were they? Okay, how awesome.
Yeah. All right. I wasn't gonna talk about keyboards, but what am I talking about? I'm going to talk about You Might Not Need a Python Class by Adam Grant. So I think we've probably talked about this before, but it's worth reminding people because there's a lot of people that come in to Python from other languages, and classes are used a lot in other languages, and you don't really have to use them here so much. So I'm just going to run through some of the options. One is for simple data containers. Think about named tuples, which are great, or data classes. Actually, I'd probably data class first, and then if it's not quite right, named tuple. But here's an example of somebody doing a custom class with point, and also the indenting is wrong here, Adam. But oh well. Anyway, examples of how to use that with a named tuple and or just a data class. So it works pretty good. You don't usually have to create your own classes. All right. I don't
Yeah.
really
And
see
also,
that much.
like if you're creating a class with a static variable, there's a really good chance that should just be a module level variable.
Yeah.
Like modules themselves often can
Well,
behave in the same way that people do classes. Like I want to group the functions together and have some shared data. Like
that's a module.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, so that's one thing that's not in this, but I one of the things I've taught people for a long time is if you think you need a singleton pattern in Python, it's just a module. Just do a
Yep,
module.
100%.
Um, and there isn't any really, and if you're afraid of global data in Python, it's not really global. It's just global to the, yes, it's accessible to anything, but it's just module global. It's not a big deal. Anyway, examples with points. But there's some surprising stuff in here. Stateless utility functions just use functions, and here's a this is somebody that must have came from. If everything's a stat, like you said, if everything's a static method, then it doesn't need to be there. Just make it a function. Grouping constants also use modules. Well, there's also enums that you can do, but anyway, yeah, if you're just having some constants and you're trying to group them together, just put them in a module. For some reason, this freaks people out sometimes, and I think it's just the people that are new to Python. But
Yeah, I think. I mean, I came from C#, which had a lot of very much like everything had to be in a class at the time that I
yeah,
was doing it, like literally everything. So I was very much in that space, but I've moved on. Also, on the constants,
yeah.
I agree, but maybe throw in a typing final of type. So they've got like a host and a port. You could have a typing.final bracket stir and a typing.final bracket int.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
then
So
at
at
least the
least your
editors and
linter
stuff go, yeah, like don't edit this.
don't edit it. Yeah,
Unless you're meant to, but the way they say the word constant, that probably means not so much changing.
yeah. But also having it in a class doesn't stop people from changing it either.
No, at least you get a warning.
Yeah.
Tells you you're bad if you want to be bad.
Managing state with simple structures, use dictionaries or lists. Definitely. What a lot of this, the gist is Python has a lot of built-in stuff that you can just learn how to use dictionaries and lists well. It'll take care of a lot of stuff. This one's surprising to me. Simple one-off operations use lambdas or comprehensions. I mean, sure, the example works for a lambda and comprehension, but also you could just use a function. If you're going to grab a lambda, you could just write a function. But yeah, lambdas are great. Avoiding complexity, use built-in libraries. Don't reinvent the wheel. There's probably something that there's an example with config parser or JSON. They usually they can do a lot. Yeah. And then this is I'm glad we tie into your first topic. When you actually need a class, well, there's a bulleted list, but he didn't do a new line, so I'm pretty sure it was a markdown that didn't get converted correctly. So
Yep.
yeah. Anyway, and I'd like to add what are my additions? If you think you need a class, you probably don't. If you really do think you do, ask a friend, because friends don't let friends create extraneous classes in Python. And then if you think you're the exception, it probably isn't an exception. But and then finally, I'd like to say, if you think you need data classes, but data classes aren't quite cutting it for you, check out Adders. Adders is still around, and Adders is awesome. So
Yep. Or Pydantic.
yeah, or Pedantic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When when you actually need a class, yeah, I agree with this. I like it.
Yeah. Well, so what did he say? He said, if you need to encapsulate state or behavior, yes, but also you could
Maybe.
use a data class or a module.
Yeah.
If your objects have clear behavior/methods associated with their data, and you're modeling complex hierarchical structures.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking the
And
middle one. Like if you have data that is tied to an instance of the class, you need to have multiple ones of those, and the methods
yeah,
operate on that particular data. Like that's when you need it, right? Not for all the other jumps and hoops people used to use it for.
and as far as inheritance hierarchies go, I have since I've been using Python, I have multiple times created class hierarchies and then regretted it. I don't think I have
Yeah.
any that were legitimate reasons to use a class hierarchy. But also, after using Python so much, I don't create class hierarchies in C++ much anymore either, because I like the using containment instead of inheritance. I think is a cleaner model. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's enough for
Composition
classes.
over inheritance, indeed.
That's it.
Goes a
Yeah.
long way.
All right. Those are our topics. Do you have any extras?
I have at least one extra. Let's see what I can do about that. So this Thursday, as in 3 days from now, 8 o'clock Pacific time, I will be doing a live webcast with Will Vincent from
Oh,
PyCharm.
neat.
Yeah, so we're talking about basically UV, what is UV, all the way that you can apply to your projects. Should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I wasn't entirely sure what we're going to cover. Will and I talked about it today. Have a bunch of great ideas.
Cool.
So if you want to see UV in action, we talked about that post from Armin Ronacher, I don't know, a few months ago or whatever. Why are you not using UV? If you're not, why? A lot of people are like, what's UV? Or it's too hard to move from, or it doesn't, whatever. Like we'll kind of like address all that kind of stuff. Plus maybe some fun Docker things, some performance things, all over the place.
Awesome.
Yep.
I have a couple extras.
All right.
So first off, this was sent to us by listener John Hagen. The PyPI blog has a incident report about a phishing attack. So apparently there was some targeted phishing emails. There were some, and I didn't read this that closely, but it's creepy because it was a phishing attack that involved a fake PyPI that had like a phishing domain that was in the middle. So if somebody clicked on the link, it all behaved just like PyPI, but there was somebody in the middle capturing stuff. That's really creepy. What was it? It involved like the fact that in some fonts I and J look identical. So it was a pypj.org domain. Yikes. Anyway, just wanted to have people aware of that. It was apparently found and fixed relatively quickly. There were, I guess, four user accounts successfully phished. They're either disabled. So what is there's some recommendations, takeaways, calls to action. If you have a dormant PyPI account, so if you have a PyPI account you're not really using, consider removing it. You can always create another one if you need to later. If you have an older PyPI account and you're not using 2FA yet, please sign up for that, even if you only pop in once a year. Make it more secure. Be good. And use WebAuthn via browser hardware security or hardware security keys. Wow. I don't even know what. Is that just web authentication? I don't know. I don't know what this is.
I think it's like YubiKey type stuff.
Okay.
I don't do it though, so I don't know that one.
I'm
all about the 2FA, and I'm
Yeah.
all about the 45 character password, but I'm not doing WebAuthn
45 characters? Wow.
or whatever. Like I'm so frustrated. There's so many websites out there that you'll set, like I used to have a default. I think it maybe was 36 and one password for randomly generated password. I'm like that should pretty much stop it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. And God forbid there's like a moment or two where you've got to type it in. Like, for example, on Windows, if you get a new system, you got to log into your Microsoft account before you get into the system, the first boot or something. Like, oh God, I got to type it. So you don't want it to be like, a paragraph, but so many websites go, no, your characters have to be, your passwords have to be less than 16 characters or less than 12 characters. I think my bank would limit it to like less than 10. I'm like, my bank, what is wrong with you people? Like, if anybody should accept a big password, but it's a tech support. They're like, well, somebody's going to say they're locked out of their account because somebody put a long password and they can't type it in, or there's all these crappy reasons. Oh,
what gets me is when people like passwords get when they exclude common characters like colon or quote mark, or I'm like, really, your system is not able to handle colons in a password? That's just like insane. Anyway, or
I agree.
colons.
Yeah, I agree.
But anyway, okay. So phishing attack. I've got a couple other quick extras. I do have some. I'm not dedicated to the weekly testing code, but lately it's been weekly. So testing code. I got a couple. Had an interview with Adam Johnson that was 2 topics. We split it into 2 episodes. Both are now available. We had PyTest Django that we talked about, and then we talked about Git tips for testing, and the top, especially some of the stuff on the Git diff, Git stash, and Git bisect sections are pretty interesting. So some good stuff there.
Yeah, very nice.
And those are my extras.
All right.
Do you have a joke?
I do. But this joke, you know how they say jokes are not funny if you got to explain them? I'm going to explain this anyway. But not the joke itself. I'm going to explain the foundational information people need to know. So a lot of times people say these days, Brian, they say Visual Studio. I'm using, like, what editor to use? Oh, I use Visual Studio. They're not using Visual Studio. They're using something called Visual Studio Code or VS Code, right?
Yeah.
There has been since the 90s an editor called Visual Studio. It is not Visual Studio Code. It is a beast of a beast. Like, it's like a 5 gig download. It manages Azure. It does database. It does Team Foundation Server. It does like all this stuff. It's like a really heavyweight editor. And VS Code was basically created to make a lightweight little editor that is not Visual Studio proper, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I got to just set that because I know a lot of people, especially younger folks, Visual Studio is Visual Studio Code. But now, are you ready for the joke?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So there's a nurse talking to a guy. Says, "Do you have any history of mental illness in your family?" The guy looks over and goes, "Well, my brother uses Visual Studio 2022 as a default text editor."
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It's pretty good, right? Pretty good. Because that thing's big and it's slow to start and it's like ridiculous. For what? It's default text file editor. Yeah, that's the joke. That's what I got you.
I haven't had to use Visual Studio for a while, but we did used to. I was using it for compiling stuff, and I can't remember what the shortcode was for compiling. It was like F7 or F11 or F2. I don't know. One of the F keys was just to compile. And so whenever anybody asks me, or do you use Visual Studio, I'm like, just as a really big thing to hit F7 with, or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true. I would edit in like way back in the day. It was before Visual Studio, or VS Code. So I was probably editing it in like Vim or Sublime or something like that. And then I'd have Visual Studio off to the side, and I would just like go over to it and hit
F7
like, the key to compile, and then go back to my day. But yeah,
incredible.
Is what it is. This is a good one. I like it.
Nice. I do too. I used to use Visual Studio and I enjoyed it. I thought it did cool stuff, but as a default text editor for just simple files, it is not what it was for.
I had people like composing their email in Visual Studio, and then
oh my gosh,
really this is what you know? Okay,
all right, fair. Well, I mean, they probably do have a history of mental illness then.
I think so.
Then they open up Outlook and send it, and you know for sure there's something going on there.
Yeah, Outlook.
Exactly.
The only thing on my desktop that if I hit Control F, it doesn't find stuff. It forwards an email.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so excellent episode again. Thanks, Michael. Thanks everybody for listening.
You bet. See you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.